Hi friends, it's Caitlin. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go into personal branding. So we're going to talk about why I think it is so important, how it is a little bit different than business branding because it is, and how you can create your own personal brand. And I'm so super excited. I created an extensive blog post on this over on resonatestudio.com. And I believe it's called Stand Up or Sit Down. It's such a savage title, but I think it's going to be so super helpful. So if you prefer to read, definitely check that blog post out. It has literally a step-by-step guide on how to create your personal brand and my best tips for that. So let's get into the video. I think personal branding is so fun because you really get to be very proactive about how people perceive you. And that's a little bit different than business branding. So personal branding, I think, is going to be great for solopreneurs, people who are maybe like content creators / influencers, people that may be in the public eye, so like public speakers, things like that. These tips are going to be so super helpful for people whose brand and business is very closely tied to their person and like their face. So let's dive into the 5 tips that I have for you guys today. The first one that I have written down is defining your goals in your audience. So my last video covers this really well, but I'll kind of give you guys an overview, but I definitely recommend that you check that video out if you haven't already. And so this is going to be, what is the objective of your brand? What are you wanting to communicate about yourself? And so if you are, for example, a YouTuber and you work in the fashion space, are you wanting to show people the best clothing styles for their body type? I think just being really clear on what you want to tell people about yourself or what your purpose is for being in front of this person is going to be helpful in defining your personal brand. So the second one that I have written down is crafting your message and your story. So this one is a little bit different than the last one because this one requires you getting to know yourself. And so I actually have done a personal brand strategy before, and it was so amazing and I had so much fun with it. And at the end of it, the girl that I was working with told me that it felt like therapy because it really required her to take a deep dive into why she was putting herself in front of her audience. And when you have a personal brand, one thing that I want you to remember is that ultimately people are there for you. And there is a reason why they are watching you, and it's because they see a part of themselves in you. And this could be a past self, this could be an aspirational self, but there's a reason that they feel the need to watch you closely, listen to your thoughts, and not in a creepy way, but just in a way that it's like this person has something that I need. And so if you develop your story, you're going to understand why your audience ultimately should tune in. And so this requires you to be authentic. And so in doing so, you also develop your unique selling proposition or unique value proposition. And this is kind of like why you stand out amongst the crowd. I also have a blog post on this. I can't remember if I have a video on this right now. Maybe I need to do a video on that. But I do have a blog post on this, and it is going to help you stand out from the crowd. So choosing your platforms and channels is going to be the third tip that I have for you guys. And this is really just focusing on where is your audience right now. And so something that's super fun to do in your personal brand strategy, if you were to work with me, I think you can do this on your own, but it's actually to do your customer journey mapping. So what that means is that you're going to figure out where your audience is and get in front of them, and also figure out how many steps it takes to get them to become a raving fan. So for example, just going back to the fashionista example, we are maybe introduced to our client on TikTok. So let's say that your current customer is, or audience member, whatever word you choose to use to define your audience, they are currently on TikTok. And so TikTok is very quick, and so you're not really going to get a strong community out there. But we're not going to go into that. We'll just like keep it very high level. we need to figure out how to get that person to go to your TikTok profile, click on the little drop down, maybe go to your Instagram, and then get them over to YouTube. So this is going to require maybe a few steps, and what you need to figure out is what you need to be saying to that person along the way. We can also use the example of maybe like a public speaker. So if this is like a book tour, maybe they are introduced to you through a random YouTube video that is maybe your TED Talk, right? And so then it's kind of like, okay, well, how do we get them to buy a book? So they're watching your video on YouTube. We need to say enough in the TED Talk that we get them to become curious and maybe go to your website or go to your Amazon storefront or go to their Kindle or whatever it is to get them to that. And so when you really figure out what platforms and channels are going to help you move things along, that is going to be key. And so the fourth tip that I have for you guys is creating content and assets. Once you figure out which channels you want to be on, what are you saying? What is your content? What are your assets looking like? Are they consistent? Because that is going to be super important. And so whether that's across your podcast, across your videos, across your blog posts. So if you take a look at my blog post, for example, it's going to be closely aligned to what I'm saying on a video format, because I was one who wrote the blog post, and so my ideas are going to be very consistent. And so you really want to nail down that consistency so that as they are going across your platforms, they're not getting different vibes and being confused. And so the last tip that I have for you guys before I dive into some frequently asked questions is going to be building engagement and community. So you're going to want to nurture your audience and really not necessarily cater to them, but just remember why they are there. So if your audience came in for fashion, then give them the fashion content. Don't kind of like bait and switch them, right? And you also want to actively engage with your community. So remember, your audience are people, right? And this can go for businesses as well. I think sometimes maybe people have the tendency to just see like money signs in people, but this is especially important with personal branding because you're a person connecting to another person, and because of that, they want to know as much of your personality as you're willing to show them. And this kind of goes back to your message and your story, right? So you want to ensure that whatever you've allowed them to have access to as far as your expertise, your knowledge, and your story, that they kind of continue to have access to that and that you engage with them on that level. So just to recap, the 5 tips I gave you guys today is going to be defining your goals and your audience, crafting your message and your story, choosing platforms and channels, creating content and assets, and building engagement and community. So now I'll go into some questions that I think you guys may have when building your personal brand. And the first one that I want to answer is how personal branding differs from business branding, especially when your personal brand is your business. And so I think that can be a little bit difficult to understand, but I think the main deciphering thing is that personal branding is afforded a luxury that I don't believe businesses are. So the luxury that I think personal branding is afforded is that it can change over time. And I think it can change a little bit quickly over time. So I think people generally understand that people grow and evolve. And I think the really fun thing with personal branding is that you're a person connecting to a person. And I said that earlier because it's true. So people understand that people may have ideas that change, and they can change their perspective, they can change which niche they choose to fall into, and they can also, I think, expand over time. So they're not just stuck in that niche, they can choose to do something a little bit different. And I think businesses have to be a little bit more strategic about that. So it's not that they can't do it, I think it just maybe takes a little bit longer. So a question that I think would get asked pretty frequently is, how do I determine what my personal brand goals and objectives should be when starting to build my brand? So let's just be honest, as much as I think motivation maybe has a negative connotation, if you are in front of people, why? It's the question that you want to ask. Why should they follow me? Why should they subscribe to my YouTube channel? Why should you work with me for your personal branding? That's why I am in front of you guys today, because I think that I can help you with your personal brand, right? So then at that point, you have to ask yourself, why should they trust me? And so I think if you get very clear on your motivation and your intentions, that is going to shape your message. With your motivations and intentions, you are also going to understand your audience's, maybe their pain points, and help them understand that you see them. So, for example, the client that I worked with, her YouTube channel was around girls that had a very specific size. So she's like, I want to cater to these girls who are the same size as me and show them that we can also dress very, very nice and very, very beautifully. And because of that, her audience learned to trust her. And so they learned to trust her across all of the content. And so no matter if it was on YouTube, it was on Instagram, if it was on Pinterest, if it was on TikTok, they trusted her across the platforms because she was consistent. And her motivation was to kind of show that expertise and just kind of be like a North Star for girls that are of that size and have a sense of fashion. So the second question that I have is, what are some specific ways I can consistently create high quality content that provides value for my target audience? So again, this is going to be tapping into what your audience is referring to you for. So if you have a specific expertise in something, definitely show that. And of course, with high quality content, that is going to definitely refer to maybe like the materials that you have. So if you're writing blog posts, if you are posting videos, sometimes high quality content is not always about the actual camera, for example. It is not about what you're writing your blog post on. Share your expertise, and you can do this through like tips that people can apply today, which I hope I've done for you guys. You can also show them how to like DIY this. You can do this through case studies. You can do this through like thought-provoking commentary, and just showing them kind of like how you got to where you are at. And this kind of goes back to people believing that you are this like ideal version of some sort of themselves. And I don't know if that makes total sense, but if it doesn't, just let me know below. But when we watch somebody on YouTube, for example, they're giving us something that we want to see and maybe a version of ourselves that we want to become. So just give them tips on how to go from where they are now and how to get to kind of like where you are and maybe even surpass you. So the third question that I have are, what are the best social media platforms for establishing my personal brand presence? So this is going to depend on your industry and your niche. And all I have to say, and this one is going to be very, very short, is, again, my last video is going to be super helpful on this, but go where your audience is. So if your audience is not on TikTok, why are you posting on TikTok? If your audience is not on YouTube, don't waste time on buying the latest camera so that you can post YouTube videos. Go where your audience is. That's all. And then the final question that I have for you guys, which I think is closely tied to number one, and it's just like, how will I know when it's time to reevaluate or pivot my personal brand strategy if it no longer aligns with my goals? So this is where personal brand strategy is so fun, because you are a person, you're going to grow, you're going to change, you're going to evolve, and that is allowed. It's allowed for businesses too, but it's especially allowed for personal branding. And so you're going to know it's time to change when two things happen. When your numbers go down, when your community is not engaging, or if your community is just straight up telling you like, hey, we don't really love this content. Could you try this? Could you try this? The second thing that's going to happen is you are no longer going to feel aligned. You are going to feel your passion shift somewhere else. And personal branding is so amazing because you are not forced to do anything. If you do not want to continue posting the content that you have been posting for 5 years, you can just do something else. So you can go wherever your passion is moving you to. And so if you feel in your heart of hearts that you want to add something to your content, for example, I think it'll just be best if I just use this example. When I was working with my client, she was like, I want to show more of my culture. And I was like, yes, do that. You're allowed to do that. And I think the biggest concern that people have is that they are going to lose the audience that they currently have in order to grow into this new content creator that they have imagined for themselves. So in showing her culture, she was like, I don't want to lose the audience that I already have. So how I like to think about it is kind of like using a 70-30 rule. So if 70% of your audience loves you no matter what you do, and 30% of your audience is kind of like, I'm only here for a very specific kind of content, such as the fashion content that she's currently posting, when she maybe starts to show something that they did not originally sign up for, yeah, you might lose that 30%. However, what you'll find is that you are making room for that 70% to grow into maybe a 90%. And so now what you have is 90% of your audience are these raving fans that love you no matter what you do, no matter if you're posting about your culture or your fashion, or no matter what you do, these are raving fans who have followed you, who have grown with you, who are choosing to evolve with you. And so that is really what I just really want to stress here, is that if you are telling your story, if you're doing the tips that I listed above and if you're doing the tips I listed earlier, people are just going to love you. And if you're being authentic and you're being your honest self, people will like it no matter what. That's what I have for you guys today. I hope this video was super helpful. If you think that this will be helpful for anybody in your life that needs personal branding, such as your solopreneurs, your content creators, your influencers, your public speakers, anything like that, or if you just think it would be really great for a friend that's maybe coming up and wanting to be in the public eye, definitely share this video with them. It would make me so happy. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe, please, so that I know that you guys are enjoying the content. And just to have a recap of this whole video, all of this is on the blog post. I'll also link that down below in case you guys want to follow along there. Until next time.